Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to England once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a couple of times before. This will be review number 5 or so involving this brewery, if memory serves me correctly, and they're mainly known for their kind of sessionable beers actually, and also selling their beers in the pint cans. But the one that we're going to have a look at today is a style that they don't do all that often, and I think it will be really quite interesting actually. So yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. For this review then, we will head down to Bristol in the southwest of England, a very good beer city these days for those of you who don't know, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Arbor Ales. So this particular beer is called Breakfast in Bed. It comes in at 9% ABV, and they're describing this one as an Imperial oatmeal stout brewed with coffee and chocolate. So yeah, the beer I think should be pretty good, but I have to admit I do think it's a little bit crazy to sell a 9% Imperial stout in a pint can. But you know, as I say, that is one of the trademarks of Arbor Ales. Most of their beers are very kind of sessionable and drinkable. So yeah, this one is a little bit out there for them. I know they have one, I think it's called Hop Hazard, that's a double IPA as well, and they do actually recommend on that one that that's a sharing can. They don't recommend it on this one right enough. So yeah, maybe this is intended to be a sort of night ending beer, or one to kind of wake you up actually. But yeah, regardless, I think it should be quite an interesting one. I know they don't do too many Imperial stouts, and that was the main reason that I picked this one up. 568 millilitres is one Imperial pint for those of you watching in other parts of the world. So yeah, this one I think is a bit of a hefty thing to go through. I think I paid like about £5 or £6 for this beer, so that is, you know, if, let's say it's £6, that will be, you know, about €7, something like that, maybe $7.50, $8 American. For those of you watching in Sweden, who I know there's a lot of you, that will be roughly, you know, about 70, you know, between 70 and 75 Swedish kroner depending on the exchange rate. But yeah, this one I think should be really interesting, but I have to say I am glad that I'm going to share this with my dad. As I've told you before, coffee beans are one of my favourite adjuncts to put into beers. I do like a good oatmeal stout as well, so I think this one should provide a really interesting concoction of different things. And always nice to review new beers from Arbor as well actually. I need to make sure I review more beers from these guys the next time I make it home to Scotland. So yeah, curious to see how this one turns out. My good friend Harry over at Blue Nose Beer Reviews is a big fan of this brewery. He reviews their beers quite regularly, so make sure you check out the link to his channel that I'll try to remember to put in the video description below. Otherwise just search Blue Nose Beer Reviews on YouTube and you'll find them. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Arbor Ales before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the English beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to very regularly at the moment, because I am enjoying a little bit of time at home in the motherland of Scotland, and these English beers are very accessible. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Arbor Ales then, on to my brewery notes. So Arbor Ales, as I've mentioned to you already, are from Bristol in the southwest of England, and the company was founded by Jonathan Comer, who previously worked as an engineer, and they opened in 2007 and then expanded quite quickly throughout 2008 and 2009. So John built up Arbor's reputation by rarely brewing the same beer twice and just experimenting with lots of different hops, malts and yeasts and things like this, and he was one of the first brewers in England to kind of take this approach. But 2009 also saw them buy their first pub, which was the Old Stillage, and then in 2010 they bought a second called the 3 Tons in Hotwells. But over the years they just continued to build up the brewery, and then a little bit later in 2015 they moved into a new facility in Easton in Bristol, which if I remember rightly is in the kind of northeastern part of the city near the Temple Meads. Is that what it's called? Temple Meads railway station. So yeah, quite close to Moorbeer I think as well, if I remember rightly. But they've continued to expand this brewery over the years with new tanks and other pieces of infrastructure. But basically what they say is that their motivation is to brew beers that they would like to drink themselves, and they seem to mainly focus on the sessionable beers, as I mentioned earlier, such as the My Little Sobroni that I reviewed for you before. So you get a lot of pale ales from these guys, some lower ABV IPAs and things like that. There's a few kind of lower ABV stouts and stuff like that as well. So to get a big Imperial stout like this one from Arbor Ales is quite unusual. These guys do like to focus on the kind of pub side of things, but their cans, as I said, are Imperial pints, 568 millilitres for those of you in different parts of the world, but as of January 2021, when I'm reviewing this beer for you, they've apparently produced around 80 different kinds of beer. And like I said, this is my 5th or so review involving this brewery here on the channel, and as I said, the main reason that I kind of got back into looking at beers from this brewery was having seen Harry's review of the My Little Sobroni. So the next time I'm home, I will try and review a few of the others from that brewery. So they've got quite a few different kind of single hop pale ale sort of thing. So I'll see about getting a few of those to review for you at some point soon. But from what the English beer tubers tell me, this brewery is quite highly regarded amongst them as a sort of just really solid and very good value session beer brewery. That's how they really rate these guys. So yeah, like I say, this beer is a little bit kind of more unusual from them, but hopefully it turns out to be really quite nice. But yeah, as I said to you, that is all I can really tell you about this brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this one itself then. So as you can see, the can looks massive in my hand. One Imperial British pint, 568 millilitres, so definitely more than the 440s that you're going to get, but they say on the back, 2 half pints, so I think maybe that is inferring that you should kind of share this beer, and that's what I'm going to do with my dad just after this one. But yeah, an Imperial oatmeal stout brewed with coffee and chocolate, and it does contain, it says it's got wheat and oats in it as well. So yeah, oats and oatmeal, I would think. But yeah, really nicely presented again. This sort of maple leaf, I don't know if it's a maple or a sycamore leaf actually. It's a maple or a sycamore leaf from, that is the symbol of Arbor Ales actually. But yeah, nicely presented. Black top on the can there, 568 mils. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the taste. And then this is just going to be an absolute beast of a beer, I'm sure. So yeah, let's go for it. I just still think that's crazy. The size of this can. Insanity. Insanity. There we go. So that's about 2/3 of a pint, it says here on the glass at this point. So yeah, we've got another third of a pint sitting there back in the can. So yeah, I'll probably give a little bit of my glass to my dad as well after the video, and then he'll have the remainder of the can. But yeah, as I've told you in other videos before, I absolutely love coffee beans as an adjunct in beer. When it comes to coffee, they're so diverse. I mean, they're almost as diverse as the different hops that you can get. They can be grown in different parts of the world, so you've got different soil composition, you've got different water composition that's feeding these things. But from what I gather, when it comes to coffee beans, it's all about the MASL, the MASL, the metres above sea level at which the coffee is grown. So apparently with higher altitude, you get more aromatic, more floral, more fruity flavours out of different coffee beans. So yeah, that's the main thing to notice about that. So we will comment on that a little bit when we actually do the aroma and the tasting of the beer. But as you can see, and as you would expect from an Imperial Stout, this one's poured a lovely kind of dark ebony rosewood colour. You can see there's about between a quarter and a third finger of a frothy, I would say kind of medium tan head on this one. That's going to fade away very quickly though to just be a very thin foamy layer, but 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, quite a few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head there. But I mean, overall it does look pretty damn nice actually. I think this beer goes together very, very nicely in terms of its appearance, but not unexpected when you consider it is an Imperial Stout, like I said. So yeah, not too much more to say on the appearance of the beer. It looks as we'd expect for the style, so let's have a look at the aroma then and just see how we get on. When you're just moving the beer about, you do get a little whiff of the coffee and the oatmeal out of this one, but let's go for it. Yeah, that does smell very, very nice. I do like breakfast stouts actually. I really, really enjoy a coffee and a breakfast stout, and mainly that came on the back of reviewing the Key and the Sidamo Dimtu from Dugas Brewery in Gothenburg back over in Sweden. So I love coffee. I do love coffee stouts. But yeah, the aroma of this one, is very, very nice. Straight away with this beer, you can smell that lovely big kind of brown bready thing from the oatmeal. There's a little bit of a roasty, toasty kind of bread crusty quality underneath, but the oatmeal quality gives you that big brown bready, that big thick brown bready character, and that just smoothens out the whole of the beer actually. I really, really like how everything goes together in the back end of this beer for sure. But yeah, roasty, toasty, black malty backbone for me, lovely big kind of brown sugary elements, and yeah, just everything pieces together really, really nicely with that. On top of that, of course, and kind of infused into it, you've got the coffee elements. So for me, this coffee comes across is really aromatic. It's a big aromatic, oily coffee. This one, I think. As I've told you in previous reviews, I don't drink coffee. I like coffee beans in beers, but I never drink coffee. I just never drink it. I just never got into it, to be honest with you. But I think it's such an interesting adjunct to put in beers. So for me, this coffee comes across as really very rich and very aromatic and oily in a sense. There's a good little bit of kind of red, fruity character to this one, like, you know, blackcurrants and blackberries and stuff. But it's got a really, really rich, oily, aromatic type quality to it. So yeah, I really like that about this one. Yeah, it's a lovely, lovely smelling beer. So yeah, this one is very, very nice. I really, really like how this how it goes together, this beer. It really is quite straight shooting in its aroma in many ways. A lot of the depth to this beer is given to you by the coffee beans, but as I said, that's just an effect that they have. But it just works. It really does just work, this one. And again, a lot of these Arbor beers that you'll get are very straight shooting, but they're just really well crafted and really well executed. They're just a solid, solid brewery, these guys. But yeah, you can feel that coffee bean note is just kind of infused into the brown bready notes right in the middle of your nose there. There is a wee bit of a chocolatey element to this one. It's like a high cocoa chocolate, you know, sort of 80%, and the chocolate comes across as quite oily in a lot of ways. And it's almost a little bit powdery as well, to be honest with you. It's got a little bit of that kind of oily chocolate powder kind of thing. So yeah, the aroma coming out of this beer for me is very, very nice actually. It's a big oily coffee stout, this one, but I do like the kind of oatmeal-y backbone that the beer has. So yeah, the flavour, the aroma profile of this beer, I think works very, very nicely. There's not really a brown sugary element to this one. You know, when you examine it quite a lot, it is, you know, it's big and brown bready, bread crusty, coffee beans, dark chocolate. I don't really get too much of a kind of brown sugary element to this one. There is a wee bit of that kind of treacly molasses sort of thing, but I think that's the alcohol that's giving it that, rather than, you know, coming from the malty side of things. But yeah, it is quite nice. I think we've kind of described the malt base as much as we can. There are one or two little nutty and woody elements which you're always going to get as undertones in beers like this, but yeah, it's a really just interesting aroma, this beer. Very kind of straight shooting in a lot of ways. A nice, just solid breakfast stout aroma, absolutely. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, pardon me, good little bit of earthiness to this one, absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of Magnum in this. There's just something in my head tells me that this might be a Magnum hopped Imperial stout. But yeah, lovely big kind of floral aromatic tones to the beer. Yeah. And that goes well with the coffee actually, that you've got a little bit of the hoppy floral aromaticity to the beer too, but nice little bit of lighter grassiness, and then you've got all these big kind of juicy fruity characters coming out as well. But yeah, it's great. So yeah, I don't think there's too much more to talk about on the green side of things. Good bit of earthiness, nice little bit of deep floral aromaticity, and some lighter kind of grassy components as well. But yeah, lovely big oily fruity character to the beer. You know, it's just awesome how that goes together. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, definitely a little bit of a raisiny sharpness to it, a bit of a big kind of plum juicy quality. You can get a few little things like fig and kind of blackcurrant, but not too much of that. The fruits for me are very oily in this one. So big kind of blackberry notes at the very front of the nose, and then a juicier plum and kind of raisiny quality at the back, you know, these dried purple, red grape sort of things. But yeah, the aroma of this beer is really nice. At the same time, it's very straight shooting, and I'm just very curious to see how this beer tastes now. So as I always say, take a little bit of time to just ponder over the aroma of the beer before you get stuck in, but we're going to taste this one now. So this one is the Breakfast in Bed, which I'll dedicate to my good friends Harry and Thomas Opent, Harry Meadows and Thomas Hoondam, their respective YouTube channels. For obvious reasons, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about, as will the other beer tubers. But yeah, Breakfast in Bed, 9% Imperial Oatmeal Stout brewed with coffee and chocolate from Arbor Ales in Bristol, down in the southwest of England. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. That's very, very nice. One thing I'm going to say about this straight away, it doesn't lose that Arbor trait of drinkability. For a 9%er, that is stupidly drinkable. Say that straight away. It's certainly not lacking in flavour, but see, in terms of its mouthfeel, it's got a real slickness about it, and it would be, you know, it's quite easy to drink. You could easily miss the alcohol in this, absolutely. Yeah, but that's a solid beer for me. Yeah, this is one, you can feel the flavour sort of evolving out of this in the aftertaste. But yeah, that trademark drinkability that you get from Arbor really kind of shines through in this one. I wouldn't have thought you could pull it off as well with a 9% Imperial Stout, but somehow they've done it. So, you know, well done to John Comer for that. They've done it really, really well. So yeah, where to start with this beer then? It actually comes across in the flavour as very similar to what you would expect from the Aroma. So yeah, straight away with this beer, what you're going to get is that you can feel that it does have a real kind of oiliness and slickness to it throughout, but as you go further into the aftertaste, you can really feel the sort of the kind of roasty elements of this beer just kind of sitting there. So in the middle third of your palate, you can feel that nice roasty, toasty, really well fired bread crusty backbone there, but at the same time it kind of feels like a bit oily, like you know, like the coffee beans are contributing to that as well. So yeah, the backbone of the beer is really roasty and toasty and kind of well fired, but you know, just on top of that, you can feel that the oatmeal is kind of thickening that out. The oatmeal gives you this really kind of brown bready backbone on top of the kind of bread crusty qualities actually. So yeah, it's really interesting how this beer just pulls itself together. Again, it strikes me as very straight shooting, but it's just really well crafted, and that is the trademark, as I've repeated a few times, of Arbor Ales. Absolutely. So yeah, like I said then, roasty toasty backbone to this beer, but again, it's not overly harsh, but that sits there in the middle of the palate. It does develop a little bit of oiliness. You can feel that nice kind of brown bready quality from the oatmeal there, but it's very, very smooth actually, and it develops a bit of graininess the further you go into the aftertaste. That kind of sits there, and on top of that oatmeal note, that's where you get the coffee. The coffee does come across as being a little bit more kind of earthy than it does. It becomes across a little bit more earthy in the flavour than it does in the aroma, absolutely. But you still get a lot of aromaticity there. This is a very, very aromatic and very oily kind of coffee that you get out of this one. There is a wee bit of that kind of, black, red, fruity kind of quality out of it, which is really interesting. And that just kind of sits there. For me, the chocolate kind of sits on, it's a very layered beer, this. So on top of the coffee, you get the kind of chocolate, and I think it's about an 80-90% cocoa chocolate that you get out of this one. It's not overly dry. Again, the chocolate comes across as very oily in a lot of ways. So yeah, I really like how that side of the beer goes together as well. In the very middle of the palate, you will get a little bit of a kind of very toasty caramelly brown sugary element coming out of the beer, and again I appreciate that. But yeah, it's really interesting how this goes together. I mean, if you go to the front corners of the palate, then diagonally back, you'll get one or two little woody elements coming out of the beer, and as you go to the centre of the palate and move forward, you will detect a few little nutty elements in there as well. And we've only just covered the middle section of the palate there, but I think that's where the main complexity of the beer is. So if you go back to the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you will get a little bit more, pardon me, sort of toastiness out of the beer. You can feel that in the back third of your palate, the wheat kind of sits there. I think the wheat gives you can feel a little bit of the roasty toasty bread crust underneath, but the wheat just gives the beer a little bit more thickness, and that back third of your palate is actually very, very smooth, and you can just feel that as you move further forward. But then the thickness drops away, and then you get that, you can move into that middle third of your palate. I don't know if the oats, I don't detect too much of the oat flavour in this one, to be honest with you, but as you progress further into the aftertaste, you can feel that the coffee kind of smooths out a little bit, and some of the aromaticity and stuff just drops away from it. So I think that is maybe the effect that the oats are having in this one, to be honest with you. I think that's what they're doing. But the oats and wheat are giving you a very, very smooth and nice beer with this one. It is, as I say though, very, very slick. So I'd be curious to know what percentage of the malt base the oats and wheat actually compose, to be honest. But it's a very well executed beer. This, it's stupidly drinkable for a 9%er, though. That's the main thing. But it, you know, on the other side of the coin, it retains that Arbor drinkability, which I'm sure is something they would want. But yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. I think we've covered the malty and adjuncty side of this beer quite in depth now. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, it is what you'd expect. You've got a nice little bit of earthiness there on the back of the palate. As you move further forward, the earthiness does spread forward a little bit. It gets gradually a little bit herbal, and as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, it's a little bit more kind of floral and aromatic. You do get a fair little bit of floral aromaticity out of this one. It says it's best before. I just noticed that. I was wondering about a canned on date. It says on the can here the 24th of the 6th 21, so I'm guessing that means it might have been canned on Christmas Eve, come to think of it, because usually with cans they seem to suggest about 6 months for cans. I wonder if the seals on cans are not quite as strong as they would be on bottles and things. It's been a long time, right enough, since I've seen a bottle of beer from Arbor. I think maybe the first beer that I reviewed from these guys, which was an Australian pale ale or something, I think that was in a bottle, right enough. But yeah, this I think that's one of the things. I'm surprised that they don't recommend you can age this beer for a little bit. Only thing I can think of the seal on the can not being quite as strong. But yeah, the hoppy side of this beer is quite nice, and I think we are drinking this one fairly fresh. I think it's been in the can just a little bit less than a month. 21st of January I'm filming this review. But yeah, the hoppy side of this beer, it does have a good little bit of floral aromaticity as you come forward. I don't know if I'd describe it as piney. I think it's more floral and aromatic, to be honest, and that builds a good bridge between the coffee beans here. But as you go round the front curve of the palate, you do get a little touch of zestiness off the beer, but you can feel that floral aromaticity just sitting underneath. But yeah, on the front third of your palate, you've got that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And that's kind of interesting as well. So if you go to the back of that front third of your palate, and you go to that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, it does have a little bit of that really toasty kind of cakey element to it, you know, like the well-fired edge of a brownie or something, just as you take it out of the baking tray. It's just like that. But yeah, as you move forward into that front third of your palate, there's a nice kind of plummy, raisiny quality to the beer, which is really, really nice. So yeah, plums and raisins, and then as you move further forward, it does have quite a slickness underneath. You do get a real slickness, but quite toast. You know, it does feel like the coffee is kind of sitting underneath the kind of front third of your palate there, but you get a nice kind of slickness and sort of cascadey type thing there. But then yeah, on the front half of that front third of your tongue, you've got a really nice, more sort of oily, kind of blackcurranty, blackberry sort of thing. I think the black currants are sort of forming the base of that fruity part of the tongue, and then as you go further into the aftertaste, you get a little bit of the kind of more sharpness and juicy kind of things from the you get a little bit more of the kind of sharper and juicy kind of things from the blackberries actually, which I really like. So yeah, I really like how this one goes together in that sense. It works very, very well. So yeah. yeah, the flavour of this beer, I think, just it works very well. It is very straight shooting in a lot of ways. It's definitely not the most complex of coffee or oatmeal stouts that I've come across, but it kind of gives you everything you would want from a sort of breakfast stout, which is what it's intended to be, and it's stupidly drinkable for a 9% as well. So, you know, for me, big thumbs up to Arbor Ales for this one. It does get a little bit drier and more earthy and roasty the further you go into the aftertaste, but yeah, lovely. So yeah, let's leave it at that for the flavour profile and examine the mouthfeel quickly. So overall, I would say that this beer is kind of bottom end of full bodied, top end of mid body. Yeah, no, bottom end of full bodied, we'll go with that. Carbonation is very, very smooth on this one. The beer comes across as quite oily, very, very slick. It's not the sort of creamiest and thickest of oatmeal stouts that you're going to come across. So it's really more slick rather than anything else. In terms of bitterness with this beer, I would say this one does have a good little bit of bitterness to it, and I would say with this one, it's hard to pinpoint the IBUs. Maybe it's about an 80-ish IBU beer, but a lot of the bitterness is coming from the coffee, so I don't know if technically you can count that as IBU, but a good little bit of it comes from the hop as well. 80 IBUs I think is probably about right for this one. The malt base is very, very smooth and very oily in a lot of ways, but it does dry out the further you go into the aftertaste, and it gives you a wee bit of sweetness as well. You do get some of those fruity elements both from the chocolate and from the coffee, as I said, but then you've got a big oily kind of fruity character to this beer as well. So yeah, it's really nice how everything pieces together in this beer. Lovely big oily fruits and just a big very oily and slick beer, this one. So I think that's probably a good place to kind of sign off on this one. It's stupidly drinkable for a 9%er, but that's kind of the trait of Arbor Ales. They seem to, you know, do very well with these kind of drinkable beers. So yeah, let's leave it there. This one, it was the Breakfast in Bed, a 9% Imperial Oatmeal Stout with coffee and chocolate from Arbor Ales in Bristol in the southwest of England. I've really enjoyed reviewing this one. I've enjoyed both the Arbor Ales I've had this time, but this probably will be the last Arbor Ale beer that you'll see for a little while until I come home again. I do want to try the Hop Hazard, I think it was called, the yellow one, the double IPA. So I hope, pardon me, that I can get a hold of that the next time I'm home. But yeah, otherwise I'll review a few more of their kind of sessionable beers. So yeah, let's leave it there. Thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, pardon me, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Arbor Ales. Do let me know what your favourite beers are from the Bristol area as well. I do have one or two more to review from that area on the channel in this particular cycle, so when they'll publish exactly I don't know. But yeah, if you are interested in really kind of sessionable pale ales and IPAs and stuff like that, then Arbor are a brewery that you definitely want to check out. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out my friend Harry over at Blue Nose Beer Reviews, and I will catch you guys in the next one. The Breakfast in Bed 9% Imperial Oatmeal and Coffee and Chocolate Stout from Arbor Ales in Bristol in the southwest of England. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and catch you guys very soon.